Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be presenting some research I've conducted regarding virtual worlds and virtual world hackers and getting some insights into their self-proclaimed views about their certain behaviors and how they're conducting their hacking and digital property theft. So at this point you're probably wondering, what is a virtual world and what is a virtual world hacker? So virtual worlds are computer-based simulated environments, and they're essentially massively multi-user environments, and users can create an avatar to represent themselves and then proceed into a virtual world and interact with other avatars. Typically, you can do most of the things that you would do in the real world also. So they're defined as an online social persistent space, and most often they aim to simulate the real world as much as possible. Individual users in a virtual world can do a number of different things that you'd probably do you'd expect they'd be able to do. So interact with other avatars in real time, participate in discussions, games, professions, create and trade virtual world currency and virtual property goods. This is really where the crux of the problem comes into play. The ability to create this currency and trade it and create goods and purchase them and trade them is a big element in why these hackers are venturing into virtual worlds. There's around about 700 different virtual worlds in existence. That was from 2010, so there could either be a lot more at this stage. Not too sure on that, but 700 is still a massive amount. So within virtual worlds, we have items called virtual property. So they're in essence, they're intangible virtual goods, and we've really called them just virtual property items or virtual property goods. They can be owned, sold, or bought, or even created by individual users. They're an asset of a person or group, and some examples are typical real-world items that you might see: clothing, weapons, currency, buildings, meeting spaces, transport like cars, lecture theatres, streetscapes, many, many more. Virtual property plays a key role in improving the ability or visual appearance of avatars, and people seek them out because they're trying to improve that ability of their avatar or trying to make it look better, because there's a massive user environments, and they want to kind of showcase that off to the entire public within the virtual world. They hold considerable value in the mind of the user, typically because they take time and effort to accumulate, and that's why I guess they're so sought after, especially as we'll get into around hackers trying to get hold of them. So where does virtual property theft come into play? So unfortunately, within these virtual worlds, crime has kind of crept up and has been flourishing. And it's due to a number of factors like we just mentioned. So economic growth and worth of virtual property goods, the anonymity that the environment provides, low risk of being caught or convicted from that anonymity, legitimate users with insufficient time as well. A market has emerged where individuals can now sell virtual property items either legally through primary markets, what we've called, or illegally through secondary or black markets. Essentially, they end up being kind of auction site structure, and you often just kind of put different items up that you have, and you can run an auction for them or sell them outright, and then once someone purchases them within the virtual world, you go and do a digital trade between two avatars. Virtual property theft offenders focus on acquiring valuable, hard to obtain or in-demand virtual property items because they're going to reap the most reward in terms of real-world money. And copious amounts of virtual currency that's not usually worth as much, but easier to obtain. So in essence, cyber criminals are burglarizing virtual world accounts by hacking into them, stealing the digital objects or virtual property, and then selling it for real world money through these websites. So a bit of the background, a few different references, and kind of bring up to speed around the environment about where this is happening. So what is announced during the third quarter of 2010, registered users of virtual worlds reached 1 billion worldwide, which is quite a lot when you think about maybe the internet has got about 2.08 billion people from last time I checked. So at least half of them seem to be using virtual worlds. In a case of robbery revolving around virtual world environments, This was in the Netherlands. A teen was sentenced for stealing virtual property items. The case involved a teenage boy beating, kicking the head and the body and trying to strangle another teenager in the victim's own room, and then proceeding to steal their virtual property items. So kind of a mixing of the real world crime with digital crime there as well. Hacker faces 2 years in prison sentence after pleading guilty to stealing approximately US $12 million worth of Zynga chips, a virtual currency used in this particular poker game that Zynga runs. Another point, the Minnesota Police Department refused to follow up on a claim by a player of Final Fantasy that someone had stolen US $4,000 worth of virtual property from their account. Often at this stage, and still kind of currently at the moment, when these are reported to police, they're often not followed up on, or the police departments often don't realize that the virtual property items can be worth real world money, and they don't see the difference between this, or they don't see the importance of the virtual property items versus, say, someone getting their car stolen. In 2008, when a 43-year-old woman hacked into a computer of a man she married from within a virtual world environment, she then proceeded to erase his avatar and then that he'd spent a lot of time and effort creating, which is not good. In 2012, the Dutch Supreme Court upheld a conviction for the theft of items in a game called RuneScape. So we're getting towards 2012 where things are starting to change, and the legal system starting to recognize the value of virtual property items. So this was another big case, which is kind of the highlight for the presentation. Online gamer killed for selling virtual weapon. A Shanghai online game player is stabbed to death a competitor who sold his cyber sword. The incident creates a dilemma in China where no laws exist for the ownership of virtual weapons, which makes it particularly challenging. Chen Wei stabbed competitor Zhu Kaiyuan repeatedly in the chest after he was told Zhu had sold his dragon saber used in the popular online game Legend of Mir 3. Legend of Mir 3 features heroes and villains, sorcerers and warriors, many of whom wield enormous swords. Q and a friend jointly won their weapons last February and lent it to Zhu, who then sold it for Australian $1,129. Q went to the police to report the theft, but was told that the weapon was not real property protected by law, like I was mentioning earlier. Zhu promised to hand over the cash, but an angry Kui lost patience and attacked Zhu at his home, stabbing him in the left chest with great force and killing him. So this is really a case of digital goods theft that's led to, in essence, a revenge attack and someone actually dying from this. Some related academic work. So this is the first study in the world to conduct a self-reporting survey on self-prolific cybercriminals in the virtual world space. Some other studies which we used in our related work were surveying of self-confessed offenders, as well as reporting of cybercrimes has been examined in the past by Graham and Bowling 1995, Hernandez in 2000, and Sabutra in 2016, and Kumar in 2016 also. The work's primarily been focused on offenders of traditional or physical act crimes such as youth violence, burglary, assault, and sex offences. To our knowledge, there are no self-reporting offender surveys of hackers or cyber criminals. The closest we found was a study from Rogers, Smoke, and Liu in 2006, which examined the differences between individual self-reporting computer-related deviant behaviour and those reporting no computer-related deviant behaviours. So the methodology we used, it was an anonymous cross-sectional survey, and participants were asked to complete the survey voluntarily with no incentives or rewards. Ethics was approved by the Deakin University Human Research Ethics Committee. The survey instrument consisted of a 7-page format with multiple choice questions with the option of additional written responses and a few different questions. We managed to get responses from 100 different offenders, and they were discovered from different virtual world community groups. The sets of questions provided were broken into the following different categories: virtual world usage analysis, thief profiling, theft practices, recovery and detection, and security analysis. So onto some of the results that we found that we'll go across. In terms of thief profiling, how long have offenders interacted or used virtual worlds for? The highest amount was 2 years or more, being 42%. How many hours a day do offenders interact with virtual worlds for? Quite a high amount, 5 to 7 hours a day at 38%. Why did they join virtual worlds for? Oddly enough, we found the highest percentage being just to socialize, and only a mere 13% actually joined them to steal virtual property goods. So it seems like they join it for fun in essence, or to socialize, and then they realize that there's actual profit to be made from stealing these virtual property items. In terms of the age bracket, the highest age bracket for these offenders falls under 20 to 24 at 37%, followed by 17 to 19 years of age and 25 to. So where do they originate from? So the highest amount comes into play in terms of Australasia being 22% and North America being 13% and Latin America being 15%. So we're kind of sitting around Australia being the highest. But as you can see from the pie chart there, there's a lot of different countries who contributed to this. Chosen times for committing virtual property theft, and then why. So the highest time chosen by these offenders was 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. at 19%, and that kind of probably goes into play that maybe these particular people are wanting to do this at night, but there is kind of a chunking of offenders there who are doing it from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at 15%. And then why are they choosing that particular time? At 57%, which is by far the highest, it was the only time I've got free, followed by 16%. It's the best time to steal virtual property items. Virtual currency and virtual property items stolen. So on the left here, we've got virtual property items. The highest percentage was 26%, being thousands of items at once, and followed by 25% being hundreds of items. That's how many they've stolen across their hacking career, I guess you could say. How many have they stolen from the entire time they've been doing this? And in terms of virtual currency, how much have they stolen? We've got 19% over 5 million, followed by 16% over 200,000. So quite a lot of virtual currency being. Markets where virtual property goods are sold. So we talked about this a bit earlier. We've got the primary markets being legitimate, and then secondary markets being typically more of where the black market transactions occur. It's not to say that the hosting sites are black market, but just the trades themselves. So primary markets being yes, 51%, and then in terms of secondary markets, they said yes, 76%. So it's kind of a fairly high amount of people using secondary markets in terms of the black markets to sell these goods. So the proceeds of crime, how much money was actually being made? So real money, how much was it made by offenders from selling these items or the virtual currency? So the highest peak element here was over $50,000, and that's at 23%, followed by under $100 being 17%. So we've got a bit of a discrepancy here where you've got a high amount being 23%, which are making a lot of money, over $50,000, but you've got quite a large chunking as well, being 17%, where those people are making, maybe just doing it once off and just stealing one item and selling it at maybe just a once off every now and again, followed by 16% being over 30,000. In conclusion, virtual worlds of virtual property goods are very highly used and much in demand, and we're seeing 1 billion registered users, and the virtual property market valued as high as 50 billion USD by some experts. Virtual property theft is a popular new choice for cyber criminals. Those elements we talked about, anonymity, low risk, undetectable money laundering. There's so many different elements here which make it easy for hackers to conduct theft and make money, real world money. The results collected from this study are just another piece in the puzzle and going to directly assist with stopping these cyber criminal offenders and helping to develop a solution. So we've got two main elements which we can focus on for creating a solution or heading in the right direction towards a solution. So target hardening, strengthen the security of virtual worlds to reduce the chance and risk of virtual property theft occurring. So doing some kind of coding or manipulation of the mechanisms involved in the software. Solution two, what we call situational crime prevention. So increasing the risk of thieves being caught or detected, intrusion detection systems, that kind of thing. Increasing the awareness of virtual world users about the vulnerability to virtual property theft. So a bit around CETA and kind of making users more aware and educating them about this kind of crime occurring so they can try and protect themselves also. Because as we know, with cybersecurity, the human element can be a large factor as well. Thanks for taking the time to watch this presentation. Hopefully you found something interesting about it and maybe it sparked your curiosity to go and check out one of these virtual worlds and make an account and just explore them a little bit. If you've got any questions about the research or the findings here, you can shoot me an email to the email address listed there and we can discuss this further. Thanks very much.